So, hello, Melanie Stuckey. Thank
Hello.
you for joining this amazing conversation on research creation and creation research. Um, you've given me a couple of sentences to describe you and to describe your connection with this amazing organization called the CRITAC. Sentences are, and I'm going to read them out loud. Those of you who are used to watching me do this, I have a script that is just off camera, so my eyes are going over here, and it says the following. CRITAC is a multidisciplinary center for research, innovation, and knowledge transfer in circus arts. And Melanie, you tell us that your mission is to enhance human potential and performance through applied research and innovation. At CRITAC, you are a researcher of performance optimization and social innovation.
Mhm.
According to the text that I hear. Super amazing. And so you and I obviously have had a moment to connect on why we're doing this today in the context of talking about Agatha and Adrian, Agatha and Adria. But I kind of want to know now that you've had these specific official words that appeared on that document that I was reading, what do you really want us to know about CRITAC? What, yeah, tell us.
So CRITAC is really, it is multidisciplinary. It is a research center. It does focus on innovation and knowledge transfer. But I think that it really goes so much deeper than that. I mean, a lot of the things we do are in circus arts, but they can be applied to contexts way outside of the circus arts. We do stuff in physical education and, greater society, things like that. We also, being multidisciplinary, instead of like, we have four main pillars. So there's like technology and design and performance optimization and social innovation, but we really try hard not to keep it as four silos and to really find how we can integrate, because our mission is about increasing human potential or advancing human potential. And I think to do that, we kind of have this view that it's not just about an individual and their personal, physical, and psychological states or processes, but it really is an entire context of things that need to come together to enhance that person's human potential. So whether that means having, from the design perspective, the equipment and all the things engineered properly. So I'm not an engineer, so if I say anything that's stupid, sorry, but like, so it's ergonomically correct or not causing injuries so that it can make you do the most incredible things possible, from all of the physical conditioning and psychological resilience and things you might need to go with that, but also like how to have fun with it and how to enjoy, and how do we remove barriers, and how do we create more access for people, and how are the contexts that we're in keeping people out or letting people in and enabling them to enhance their human potential. So for me, it's a lot more than just an individual kind of psychological, physical thing. It really is applying it to the entire real world. So
Which will lead me in just a quick second to how this all connects to those two key words that we're exploring in this particular series, research
Mhm.
and creation. Because wow, you just now gave us a massive series of things that I predict that you're going to tell us are connected to such a thing. Now, though, before we do that, so that's Kritak and focusing on the human, on what is humanly possible. You, Melanie. What should we really know about you, Melanie?
I guess what to really know about me is what motivates me to be in this, and what motivates me to connect performance optimization and social innovation. And for me, it's my vision for like my life in the world is very connected to the mission for CRITAC. So the idea of removing barriers and increasing access to people so that people can truly thrive in life in a way that makes them feel great. And I love movement. I think that movement is such an incredible way for people to connect with each other, with themselves, with the world around them. And unfortunately, the way that we've often been trained in it through gym class and the gym and all sorts of things really actually disconnects us from our body and disconnects us from all of the wonderful things. It doesn't, a lot of people don't think about going for a run and think about having fun, and about all of the wonderful things it can bring. So for me, my motivation is to really help change some of the systems and the thinkings and the, I guess, ideology behind movement so that it is actually the type of context where people can thrive.
Yay. Sounds to me like you and CRITAC are talking to each other and sort of like creating each other and collaborating in defining yourselves.
We're well aligned, yes.
So brilliant. So yes, I've said it a couple of times already. Always fun to repeat it. We're doing this thing called creation, research, research, creation. Melanie, after those brilliant words about these pillars that seem not to be just columns, right? They're doing all these intertwining things. What do you call creation?
Ooh. So creation, I struggle. I love contemplating things 100%. Surprise, that's probably why I got a PhD. But I feel like creation can be a number of things. Like in its sort of like basic definition, it's bringing something into existence. And I suppose that would be bringing something new into existence is what creation would be to me.
And research.
Research to me is, this one made me think a lot, but what I kind of boiled it down to is that research is the process of curiosity.
Which is taking me directly to this next question as to why you and I are talking now in this context. Agatha and Adrian. I know you're going to tell me how all of these things are matching. Tell me how CRITAC, you, and they are now a part of a puzzle of research creation.
Yeah, so the puzzle started back in, I guess, around 2020 from our end. They'd already been working together for some time before then, which I'm sure they've mentioned. But our first connection with them was through a entrepreneurial and innovation lab, which CRITAC was running a little bit as a response to the pandemic. So to give artists some way to be able to take some of their ideas and move them in an industry that wasn't quite functioning the same. But that's where we first met them. And then over the years, I admit from that point, I wasn't super involved in what they were doing, but I, through lab meetings and stuff, saw a little bit about what they were working on. And then eventually we got to 2022 and we decided to make our relationship a little bit more formal. And so I love writing grants. And so I got to be the lead grant writer and really help bring together this project where we got to sort of balance our objectives with their objectives and see how we could bring them together in a way to create a 3-year research plan and I guess creation plan from their point of view as well. And yeah, so that's where we got to here.
Wowza. You've already taken us there then. So congrats for the grant. And note to all of us that are watching, what? There's somebody who likes to write grants?
1 in a million.
But yeah, congrats to you and them for that. Could you tell us a bit about actually that process, the grant process? Because a bit of what I think we at CircusTalk and I'm interested in is having some of us who are watching and experiencing this at the moment, like take some notes. Is that how do I move from point A to not just point B, but O, C, and D, and maybe an L or an M along the way? How does that work? Do you have some connections onto that particular grant process maybe for you, and then maybe some advice to people who are doing research creation and want some funding and want some grant funding behind it?
Yeah, so the nice thing about this grant is it's an NSERC grant, which is, I'm not even gonna, the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada. I know, right? But they have a section for College and Community Social Innovation Fund. So we're a college at the National Circus School, and we essentially need to connect with a community partner and do some kind of project that leads to some kind of social innovation. And that's what this grant specifically is for. The nice thing about this grant is over at least the last 2 years, they've had a connected grant with Canada Council for the Arts. So there's been an opportunity for there to be the research funding, and then for the artistic group that we're working in, as long as they're eligible through the grant, to be able to get some artistic funding that matches. So as far as that, it's a really nicely aligned grant call that happens to be available for us in Canada anyway, because it doesn't overly focus on one or the other. It gives us both funding to be able to move forward and then collaborate together. And the process is long, but it is a really useful process. I know a lot of people going into grants, myself included, and then after I get over the part, it's like, oh, it's so much work. But really, it's work that we should be doing to make sure that we have really nice collaborations. We're asking someone to collaborate with us, to commit to 3 years with us, and to hopefully have some kind of meaningful impact by the end of it. So it's a long process, but it really gives us the opportunity to really think through, like, what are our objectives? Are objectives actually aligned with each other? Do we both want the same thing at the end? How can we achieve our objectives and you achieve your objectives without having to necessarily assimilate into one, but sort of enabling us both to be able to sort of walk along the same path without overly blending ourselves, but collaborating? And how do we make sure that in doing all that, we're actually going to, or hopefully, we never know, but planning to have a positive outcome at the end? So it's a long process, but it's a really helpful process, and it helps sort of bring in the theories, frameworks, whatever it is that you're going to need for the research part, and then to understand how that creation is going to work. And then I guess along the way, if you realize something's not working, it gives you that moment to sort of back out before you commit to 3 years without having that proper methodology and thoughts in place. Having said that, it's always flexible. Things always change over the 3 years. The world happens. We create along the way and research along the way, and we have new knowledge and stuff that comes up. So it is flexible, and those 3 years will change from the plan, but it's nice to have that thought on commitment going into it.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Do I also hear, as you're speaking through the recognition of the potential of a changing universe, and yet working towards a goal, that some of this whole grant writing process and research focus can be super positive and is not only marked by fear? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and I think this is why I love grant writing, is because I've also been in science for so long, and I guess I had really supportive supervisors where I'm not afraid of failure. So if you say no, okay, I have an idea and I can maybe find another way to do it or whatever. But I see it as actually a very optimistic, like, it feels a lot more like strategic planning and visioning. Like, I see the process as that rather than this, like, we're going to see if we're going to be rejected or not, which I think a lot of people go into writing a grant worrying about that rejection right from the get-go, instead of really thinking about planning a vision, like a 3-year strategic plan for the future. So
Yeah, so with that in mind, then, yeah, these 3 years that you've all committed to each other, with the recognition, obviously, that we as humans, as we're rediscovering we're going to call it potential, to pick up a word that you had before, that some of that may change over time. We've been hearing from Agathe and Adria how they're considering these next 3 years. Can I ask maybe how CRITAC is experiencing its collaboration with Agathe and Adrien for the next 3 years? What may be specific goals for you as an institution with them?
mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So for sure, some of our goals will overlap some of the things that they said, I'm sure. But for us, a lot of the sort of the objectives that we're looking for are, well, they're kind of at different levels. So one is, first of all, is that as researchers working with them, they're obviously doing very profound work about sex and gender and roles and that also impacts us working with them. So I know since I've started working with them, one of the earlier connections I had with them is that they were presenting a little conference on sex and gender for a rehabilitation science group at University of Manitoba. And it really makes you think about, like, what is a scientist am I considering as sex that is really gender? What is a scientist am I accepting as my roles? What am I expecting are other people's roles from the people that I like? It gives me, and I think as the research team, it gives us a lot of self-reflection as well into our own processes, our organizational processes and stuff like that. So there is sort of that personal goal that comes with it. Sort of the next level up, it gives us a useful or a very meaningful circus show, I suppose, that having caused that kind of reflection in us will also cause, hopefully, that kind of reflection in audience members, in whoever they're showing it to. So we do have plans for audience members, for more scientific and academic communities to do more of the sort of conference type to help scientists consider those sex and gender issues that, or realities that are in or overlooked or biased in their work. And then at this community level too, if it's a show at an auditorium, what kind of audience members relate to them? How do we need to relate differently to different communities or different identities and stuff like that? So those are some of our lofty goals. We're just going to change the world with our research, that's all.
I'll be with you there in it. I'll be there with you in it. Yes.
Amazing.
So then, as we're all changing the world together, then as we take all of these next steps together, I dare impose myself in the process. If only because I'm drawn to such a call.
Mhm.
What's your advice? Do you have a one thing to now tell other artists, groups of artists who may be interested in undertaking this thing called research creation research? What is that one thing that you would give advice about from your perspective?
Yeah. My advice is going to be very biased from a researcher's point of view. I will say that very, very openly. But my advice would be that if you want to do research creation in connection with other researchers or someone who can support that process, is to start by making a connection. Like I mentioned, we first connected with Agatha and Adrienne in 2020, and we wrote a grant with them in 2023. So by the time we had this full-on commitment of a grant, we were quite sure that we wanted to, we were aligned with what they were doing. They had some time to work out if they had a change of heart and wanted to switch and go in a different direction, which they didn't, but they had that opportunity.
Yeah.
And they also had a chance to work with us to really understand what it was. Because I think research creation can be very many different things. There's not just like one way to do it. And so having those like small connections with the research group to see if you're visioning it the same way, experiencing it the same way, making sure that you have processes that work well, that you relate to each other well, that you can, one thing that I think is really important is that in a research team, it's not always important that everybody has the same perspective. And it's actually usually much more fruitful and more helpful if people have different perspectives, but making sure that you can hold different perspectives and relate to each other in a way that all of those can be held in the same space, right? Because if we all have one perspective, then you all are a bit narrow. Whereas if we can have different perspectives in a team, you can there's so much more potential with that. But having those times to work together to make sure that you can work through when there's any conflicts, because conflict is where we get growth and we get so much more knowledge out of conflict than sameness, right? So I think that's an important sort of process leading up is that.
Amazing, Melanie. Amazing. Made an amazing conversation in the middle of these conversations we were having with Agatha and Adia, and indeed, perhaps changing the world as we move along. So grateful for this conversation. So great. And I know we'll be continuing the work, the work. So here's to that. Here's to that.
Amazing. Thank you so much.